Let's cancel it out.
How does high heels have an effect on the woman's vulva or uterus?
What?
High heels, does that have an effect on
It
the
tilts.
uterus?
High heels cause the uterus to be tilted too far forward, and it causes pain on in that area, and it decreases the blood supply to the uterus. High heels were mostly worn by men. It comes from men. Mostly homosexual Greeks wear high heels. This is part of the sexuality of the European system for the woman to dress up like a man. G-string was used by homosexuals. It's nothing for the woman not to close her legs, but nothing you're going to see. The reason why ladies closed their legs is because the Greek homosexual men it was a law that they couldn't advertise. They couldn't show their penis. They couldn't advertise their wares. Men wore skirts. I'm going way back. They wore skirts. If they sat with their legs open, they were fined. It was called, they were advertising business. So they were forced to close their legs so they wouldn't show. And so when the white woman wanted to be sexually appealing to the white man, she had to dress up as a homosexual. So she would put on high heels and close her legs and do all the things that the homosexual white men would do. You want to get into some sick stuff now.
Yeah.
Just tell me where it comes from.
Is anything wrong with platform shoes? Like they're not high heels, but they're kind of high, but they're still.
Oh, platform shoes. Well, technically, the body is built for a certain level of gravity, and when you raise it up against its gravitational equilibrium, you are playing with Mother Nature. The body is built to hold a certain amount of gravity. That's why you're this height. And the gravity on your body is in the right balance for the size of your internal organs. And when you alter that height, you are just playing havoc here. On another level, you're messing with the gravitational force of your body, and that's not nice. It's like bodybuilders that build these big muscles. The muscles that you have are in direct balance to your kidney and liver. So if you get bigger muscles, you should have bigger kidneys and liver. That's why in medicine, Arnold Schwarzenegger, or nigger, whatever his name is, Arnold Schwarzenegger is overweight. He's technically overweight. He's not obese, but he's overweight. You see what I'm talking about? He's out of proportion for his normal skeletal structure, so he is overweight. The bodybuilders you see are overweight. They put in too much stress on their internal organs. Their organs are not built to handle that mass. I don't know how else to explain it.
What about, is there anything wrong with G-strings?
G-strings were originally worn by homosexual Greeks. I mean, it's just another homosexual advertisement for the buttocks. I mean, what's the point here? You advertising for Charmin toilet paper company or something?
Change the subject a little bit. You spoke on anti-gravity blood, and you said it real quick. Expound on that.
Well, anti-gravity is, see, the blood's got to come up from your feet. So it's working against gravity. So you have a chemical hormone in your body called albumin that helps disperse, make it lighter. And it's anti-gravitational in its response in your system. Chemically, it will be albumin because it disperses. And we have ways in which fluid is transported in your body. Your heart doesn't pump the blood all the way to your feet. I mean, that doesn't happen. It just pumps in a little radius, maybe about 6 inches around it. The rest of the distance of the fluid is carried by what we call osmotic pressure, concentration gradient, hydrostatic gradient, which is anti-gravity. Hydrostatic gradient is the word for anti-gravity in biology. And then we have osmotic gradients transmitting fluids through your skin. Like we have skin that won't let certain liquids in, but let water in, but keeps other liquids out. And we call that osmotic gradient. It just segregates that. I'm not going to let the first gradient in, let the second gradient. You see, then we have a pressure concentration gradient, whereas if I have a lot of salt in this glass and a lot of water in this glass, the water would go over here to dilute the salt because it's too toxic for the body. We call that a concentration gradient. So fluid is moving that way. Then we have an electrical gradient, because you have electricity inside the cell where the nucleus is negative, and outside is positive. So electricity is moving out. We have electricity gradient. Then we have a magnetism gradient. We have all these different ways of when happen is the body is causing an off balance, and it's always coming back to make balance. So you always have to throw this thing off balance for things to work. So if you're trying to digest food, you got to have an enzymatic press. You got to have an antagonism to digest your food, and the enzymes come as an antagonism to break down the food. It's what you call radicals. You heard this term, free radical? That's how the body works. When you're gaining something, or when you're losing something, you're not in balance, so you're radical. So you always got to have radicals in your system, because your system works on radicals. You always got to gain some energy or lose some energy. So whenever you do that, it's a radical.
So antioxidants, the whole thing about antioxidants taking or getting rid of free radicals. So you're saying that
If you get rid of free radicals, you're dead.
okay.
Because free radicals, when you gain electrons, I don't want to get into all that. Gain electrons or lose electrons, some of you may know what I'm talking about. So that's a radical. It's got to be there. Your muscles work that way. One is relaxing, one is contracting. One is male, one is female. It's always that's the social jargon of the scientists. They come out with these words to sell their products. I mean, that's what they do. They hustle words. They make fads. We have fads in chemistry. We have fads in the health food industry. Don't get taken out by these fads. One year we're going to save you with aloe vera juice. Next year we're going to save you with noni. Next year we're going to save you with free radicals. The next year we're going to save you with cow's milk, colostrum. It's just one fad. One year we're going to lower the woman's dress. Next year we're going to raise the dress. I mean, it's just fads. It's just a fad-driven industry because women run the industry. Health food industry is supported by women. And so they always put these fads in it. The book industry is run by women. The music industry is run by women. Churches are run by women. Without women, the Nation of Islam, Baptist Church, Catholic Church would shut down. Women are the ones who make these things work. Everybody knows the game. Have you ever noticed that? You go to a festival, a cultural festival, who's there? Women. So they make everything fast. The whole industry is geared toward women. That's what I'm trying to say. That's essentially what I'm trying to say. So they're dressing up you as men. I don't want to get into that. That's really sick. But anyway, most of the things that you wear are homosexual clothes the white women wear, because the white woman is only attractive to the white man when she dresses up as a man. Because the highest form of love in European Greek society was always called romantic love. And you could only have romantic love with another man. That's the way it was built. You had to go into Greek mythology to understand this stuff. A woman was classified as a breeder in older European culture. You had a breeder, you had a prostitute, concubine. I don't know if you heard these words. You had those, but your greatest love was always another man. That's the Greek army was dependent on homosexuals, because the man would die to protect his lover. You remember Michelangelo painted that little faggot who he was in love with? That homosexual guy you call Jesus? That was Michelangelo's lover. Remember? You have to go and... I don't get nobody upset with anything. You know, there's an African way of worshiping God and there's a European way. Don't get confused. I'm just saying the Europeans do things different from us. And let them do the things that they do different, but don't buy into their thing. That's their thing. It's all right for them, but it's not all right for us. And I'm just pointing out that the things that they do, that's fine for them. I don't have no problems with them being crazy. It's easy for me to talk to them when they're that way. But it's not all right for us. And just because they lie in their history, we don't have to accept it. Paul Revere's Night Run was not made by Paul Revere. He got drunk. It was made by women. I mean, it wasn't Martin Luther King's civil rights movement. It was women's civil rights movement. Women ran the civil rights movement. They made the phone calls. They've got the money. They made. I'm telling you, don't get a. They kind of masculinize our history, but that's not how history happened. It was always man and woman in African history, in African warfare. Always. You ask any black man that went to war in Vietnam or Korea, if he shot at one of those Koreans, the whole family shot back at it. The mother, cousin, even in the South today, if you hit somebody in their family, you got to fight the whole damn family. Y'all know that. Yeah. Because that's how we deal. We're a family. It's the Europeans that go into all of this stuff. Don't buy into their stuff. We got a different stuff. We got a different sexual system, different way of talking, different way of dealing with God. we get up and scream and shout and dance when we do. You go to a white church, you say amen, people turn around and look at you. You know that. You can't scream in no white church. What's wrong with him? I tell you. Anyway, I'm going off, right? Somebody keep me focused, okay? Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Wait a minute. You had your hand up.
Well, you mentioned about synthetic deodorant, and
Yeah.
I don't use deodorant, and something I don't get offended. I really, I just want to answer for some for some family members, relatives about. I mean, just how to deal with it, because I don't believe that deodorant thing, putting on that deodorant, but I do get, so you musty and this and that, and that's what, it's just my body odor, just how you can identify me if you want, So I'm trying to tell them, because I got confronted with that today about not using deodorant, and I don't have a problem with not using deodorant at all.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. I'm glad you staying over there. The more chlorophyll you take in, the less deodorant you need.
Okay.
Chlorophyll is the natural deodorant.
Right. Okay.
If you take chlorophyll tablets or whatever, somebody who's interested in doing what you're doing, they should add more chlorophyll to the body. It's the natural deodorant.
Well, I take quite a lot of
You probably do. You probably do.
And spirulina, but
More chlorophyll, that's the natural deodorant.
Something else that has worked is just taking just linen and applying that under the arms and having that kill the bacteria, because it's a lot of times it's the bacteria proliferation under there that is causing that odor.
What about those crystals? It's like,
Those are
you know the natural store or whatever?
You can use crystals, and they have ground up the crystal, and you get it in liquid form, and then they boost it with a little alum root. Yeah, you use the crystals. As long as it's not aluminum. You don't want any synthetic deodorants. That's all I'm saying. Go natural. If you're going to use it, go natural.
What crystals are there besides
Oh, they have them in a helpless store, the crystal. They have crystal spray crystals. You can buy the actual crystal itself. Some people just get the liquid, which is ground up in distilled waters. It's just dirt. Other people say clay. It's just a sophisticated form of clay, if you want to know the truth, which is an old deodorant that black people used to use. You could even buy clay deodorant. We used to brush our teeth with clay. This is the clay that pulls the tartar off. And the Europeans add flavor to the clay and called it toothpaste. They got it from us. And the toothpaste only works as long as it's in your mouth. If you don't keep it in your mouth for 3 to 5 minutes, it's not working. All you're doing is just advertising and titillating your taste buds, but you've got to keep it in your mouth to absorb the tartar and plaque. Or eat a Granny Smith apple, or eat a crab apple, and that just strips the tartar right off. Yeah, crab apple will do it, a China berry, a green apple they call Granny Smith apple. Yes, ma'am.
What are some things you can do in terms of diet or spiritual practices to tap into the melanin, to activate like alpine?
Well, you got to figure out whether you are sympathetic stress or parasympathetic stress. Whether your energy drain is coming from the male principle or the female principle, which we call the parasympathetic nervous system, or whether it's coming from the sympathetic nervous system, which we call the male principle. So you use what we call a respiratory quotient. So you have, like you write 3/4, you put P up top then, respiratory down the bottom. You know how to take your pulse. So you put your pulse up top and how many times you breathe in a minute down the bottom as a fraction. And if you have, and when you divide it through, if it's 3 or more, then you have sympathetic stress. And if it's 3 or less, you have parasympathetic stress. Then you know what direction the drain on your melanin is coming. You have to know the direction of things here. So if it's coming from the sympathetic side, then you're going to use, of course, echinacea is a herb that's good for glands. I just want to say that's good with the herb. So you can always go with echinacea because you're dealing with the gland. Then you want to use some eyebright. This is for Damiana. Eyebright, Damiana, and if you want the blood to come to your brain, so you use gotu-kola or ginkgo, or rosemary if you like, but gotu-kola and ginkgo are quite popular. I think ginkgo biloba is all over the place now. So you can use ginkgo, eyebright, Damiana, and echinacea, all of them in equal parts, and take that to get rid of the sympathetic stress. Now, if it's parasympathetic stress, you're going another direction. But I'm just going to give you a shotgun form that covers everything. Use the eyebright and use the echinacea and the gotu-kola. That's a good beginning. Just take equal parts, and that will help stimulate your melanin production. I don't want to get you all tangled up with all the formulas and everything.
What was that formula you just, you said the pulse over?
PO respiratory rate, RR. They call it respiratory quotient. It helps you figure out the direction of your stress, whether you're being stressed from serotonin, which is the sympathetic nervous system, or stressed from melatonin, which is the parasympathetic nervous system. You have to know the direction of what is coming from, or else you can't treat it, or else you're just treating symptoms. And you don't want to be in a symptom treating system. That's the European system. You want to go into the cause so you can get rid of the effect kind of situation. And always things with a lot of color in it. Red cherries, red grapes, things with color. Always good for the pineal gland. Always. And mango's good for papaya, collard greens, kale.
Do you feel like women are more spiritual than men?
I haven't found that much difference.
Really?
I found difference in the expression of their spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
but I haven't found much difference in the spirit. God doesn't really segregate spirit like that. But I found that women may express it more emotionally, men may get more intellectual with their spirituality. But nobody cries more than men. They just cry differently. Nobody gossips more than men. Hey, you don't have to agree with me. Wait a minute. Ivy's back there. She hasn't had her hand up at all.
No, now I got two questions, but actually, you said originally something about the bowel movement is based on money and bowel movement is based on sexuality.
Right.
What, can you explain that?
Well, in the Freudian concept of sexuality, the child first plays with his bowel movement, you see. And the bowel movement is believed to be an extension of the child. This is going to get sick, but just follow me. Remember, when someone's talking crazy, it's going to sound crazy. So don't look for common sense to show up in what I'm saying, because I'm talking Freud here. So you have a bowel movement, which is the way that the child gives birth to something. This is Freud now. The child is giving birth to a baby in Freudian psychology. So the bowel movement is believed to be the extension of the child. And the child moves from playing with his own, the child will play with his own bowel movement. From that, the child moves to playing with buttons. And from that, the child moves to playing with coins. And therefore, the Europeans associate money with sex. Now, you're not following this bowel movement thing. That's probably, the bowel movement is shaped like a penis, correct? Okay. A candy bar is shaped like a penis, correct? They originally designed the food to shape like sex organs in Rome and Greece. The sportula was where you get the word sport from, which originally what you call today a hot dog. And they would let the people go to the events and give them a sportula, a penis, and they would suck on their penis and select their homosexual date. The purpose of wrestling during that time was to select a homosexual mate who was advertising. And he would select your mate by going up and patting him on the behind. That's why men pat each other on the behind when they play basketball. I don't think it's homosexually based. Dennis Rodman doesn't play anymore, right? So they believe that that is the extension of your sexuality, extension of the penis, and all that sort of thing the bowel movement is. And it's still associated that way today. They still do that. They say dirty money. You may have heard this term before. Dirty money, fool's gold, or something like that is referring to that. It goes back to the mythology of the golden egg. The man lays the golden egg. The duck lays the golden egg. Midas touch. All of this goes back to associated with dirt and sex is the same. They still wrestle in dirt, which is, they used to have sex in mud, and they still wrestle. I don't know if you ever heard of mud wrestling. That goes back to this. You have to know the scatology rituals. Books on scatology. And you're looking up scatology. That's a word that they put to black people that sing in syllables. And it's they call it scat singing, which is a European word for kit. Bowel movement. So you're looking at scatology, history, and all that's revealed in there. That's why they call that popping city, scat city, put down African stuff. But that's the sexual attachment to bowel movements. It's still there in European culture. It is still there. They have not gotten far from that. They have bark rituals that they have in their history. I have a lot of that in the book called Nutricide, the new version. I have all this history in it that people just don't associate with Europeans. Kevin, you're going to have that, right? Nutricide?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got all that history in that book for you. But that's where it comes from. And remember that Freud and Carl Jung were both fascinated with bowel movements. Carl Jung is one of the founders of the mind science field. He believed he got his revelation from God having a bowel movement, and the turd fell through the roof of the church. And from that revelation, he said, "I'm free to think of anything." You just don't have a concept of Europeans sometimes. We have their fictitious history, but we never look at their true history. We have a fantasized version of Europeans for some reason. You always see them on TV, they fantasize, they get along together, they're so wonderful. You know Europeans lie and talk about each other real bad. They say, "Charles ain't nothing to me. Charles, so nice to see you." "Oh, he's a creature." You know, they never